Hi, I'm librettist Matt Boresi, co-founder of the Decameron Opera Coalition. On October 1st, the Decameron Opera Coalition revealed Heroes, a set of 8 newly commissioned world premiere operatic works exploring the past, present, and future of heroism, large and small. With me today is Eiki Isomura, artistic and general director of Opera in the Heights in Houston, and also co-founder of the Decameron Opera Coalition. Opera in the Heights has produced Unsung Activist, a new opera composed and with the libretto by performer Steve Wallace, who also joins us today. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Matt?
All right, all right. Now I can't, I'm hosting, so you try and say happy, positive things, but I want to lead off by saying that I'm deeply excited about this work. I've gotten a chance to watch it. Some folks watching this video will have already seen it. Some folks are going to learn about it now, and then they're going to go off and see it. But this is a meaningful and really fresh sounding work, as well as an important message. So I want to hear more about how it came to be, so people can get as fired up about it as I am.
Awesome.
So all these pieces have a hero at the heart of them. Can you tell me about your subject matter and how you came to it?
Sure, Matt. So once the Decameron Coalition worked it out that our next project would be about heroism and our heroes, I had my antennae out looking for stories that might be undertold. And it was in December of 2020, very late in that terrible year. There was an obituary in the Houston Chronicle about Eldrewey Stearns, who passed away that December at age 89. And he was a very important figure in the history of Houston's desegregation movement, which took place between 1960 and 1964. I read about him, and what I saw was a portrayal of a person who accomplished great heroic deeds, but also suffered greatly from mental illness and past traumas from his personal experience with racial injustice and police brutality. And I wanted to learn more about him. I contacted his biographer, who is a historian by the name of Thomas Cole. He worked with Eldrewey Stearns over many years, countless interviews, and wrote a biography and created a documentary about the lunch counter sit-in movement that Eldrewey Stearns organized. And there was just so much to be inspired by, and there was also so much that was tragic about it. And so I started by looking for some primary sources. I wanted to find transcripts of those interviews when Dr. Cole was just getting to know Eldrewey Stearns, and he had fallen into relative obscurity, even though he was the catalyst to the entire movement. Many people had not really attributed that outcome to him until Dr. Cole's work. And so it was around that time that I knew that this was going to be a story we could tell for the Heroes Project. And I reached out to Steve Wallace, who had been making a lot of noise with his R&B opera, Hell King, which it was released on Amazon Prime Video. And I said I should check this out, and I watched the first 5 minutes of it, just this really epic opening sequence, and immediately I stopped what I was doing, and I emailed Steve and I said I need to work with you on Eldrewey Stearns' story, and then I sent the email, and then I finished watching Hell King, and was just hoping that Steve would say yes. And thankfully it worked out with his busy schedule to put this together on a really short timeline. we can get into to more, but maybe I'll hand it over to Steve from there.
Yeah. When Aki reached out to me, I was excited because that was one of the things I would hope would happen with How King is that when people saw it, they would be like, oh wow, let's just try to do something else. Let's work on some other cool projects. So yeah, and he told me the story about El Drui, and I was just really fascinated with the idea of his tragedy, being that we're all opera folks, right? The tragedy, like it always draws me in, but then his heroism as well, and almost being like, in the position of not wanting to be the hero, but it's oftentimes throughout history you're thrust into a position because of things that happen around you, and you kind of have to step up to the plate. So that was really fascinating to me, just like his whole, all the stuff he went through and where he was, where he was at later in his life, drastic comparison to, his time during the sit-in movements.
Well, and when we look at the life of Eldrui Stearns, with his passing, certainly his name got a little bigger in Houston, and I hope with this piece it'll get bigger beyond.
Yeah.
It's certainly a tough story. And you had to adapt a lot. There's a lot of information, there's a lot to be said about this man, and you've only got about 10 minutes in which you did it.
Yeah.
So what did you have to elide or change or excise? How close is this to reality? What was the adaptation process like?
Yeah, so I'm a part of the BMI Lehman Angle workshop for composers and librettists for musical theater, and at the end of our first year of the workshop, we have to do a it's our 10-minute musical. So we talked a lot about adapting stories or processing stories within a short amount, 10-minute time frame, and so the first thing I thought of, well, beginning, middle, and end, and then secondly, focusing it around one like pinnacle moment, you know, and I made that first sit-in that they did, and kind of leading up to that being sort of the pinnacle thing that would be the peak of the piece. So,
well, designed little jewel box of a piece that definitely feels. I mean, it ends in a way that is, a gut punch, extremely tragic, but satisfying in a dramatic structure perspective. But it's also the kind of piece that makes you want to run out and find out more about the subject.
Yeah.
I hope so. Steve found a really, what's the word, like really streamlined way of telling the story from the beginning trauma, El Drui's personal experience, being brutally beaten by police in 1959, organizing the Progressive Youth Association on the TSU campus, and then the lunch counter sit-in, and then you know, and then at the end, sort of uh, letting us know that in spite of all of that, he fell into obscurity, and there's this like kind of cruel irony, that the same trauma at the beginning that jolted Eldridge Stearns into action and into this, great accomplishment of being the catalyst to Houston's desegregation. That's the same trauma that also caused him to slip into mental illness and obscurity, such that he was an unsung activist until his story was discovered by his biographer. And yeah, I can't believe how how beautifully he constructed it and covered so much. He also was able to highlight the efforts of three other activists that were part of the Progressive Youth Association, and um, and he it's just so beautifully done. Of course, in a 10-minute piece and with admittedly limited resources at Opera in the Heights, we economized to sort of distill the story, focusing on these four protesters who marched down to Weingarten's. And, in actuality, it was 13 protesters who all crowded into the lunch counter, demanding to be served that day, and um, you know, many more unsung heroes were part of that
Yeah,
story. Um,
definitely.
but I'm glad that Steve created such a compelling piece that, yeah, hopefully the person who finishes watching the film, jumps right in and does some more follow-up research to learn more about what happened.
Hmm.
Well, I encourage them to do so, and we can't imagine that they won't. One of the other unique things about this piece is the sound, and many people watching may think of Steve as a baritone, and so he certainly has a formal operatic background. But when we talk about new American opera, uh, we really talk about a process and a search. I mean, all of us who are making new opera in this country are trying to find out what the heck does that mean, new American opera. And so
Hmm.
frequently it involves experimenting with other sounds that we consider to be uniquely American.
Yeah,
And you mentioned BMI Lehman Engel workshop, and I think the tightness of the drama and the structure here does sort of bespeak that workshop and their care for careful dramaturgy.
yeah,
But also in the piece, I mean, uh, I hear sounds of the civil rights movement. I hear gospel, um, and doo wop. I hear. I know that you play with the national anthem in there.
hmm,
There are moments. I mean, and there are moments right at the top. You go, I'm watching an opera. Like, this is definitely an opera. Here I am watching an opera. It's being sung beautifully.
yeah,
Here's new classical music, but that is what it is. And there are also times where I feel like I'm watching a rock musical or a rock opera, and I mean that
sure,
as a compliment. I think it defies categorization to a degree
yeah,
because it so many sounds. There's also hand percussion and stomping that plays in, and some complicated rhythmic
yeah,
movement. Steve, in addition to being composer and librettist and performing, um, has also produced a great deal, and in the worlds of R&B and hip hop,
yeah.
if I'm correct. So could you please speak to the sounds that you synthesized in this work?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I wasn't really fully conscious of it. Its purpose is to carry the drama. You know what I mean? And that particular part at the lunch counter where you talk, with the hand percussion and stuff. I just think there's nothing more black than percussion and voice. You know, and I mean that's where hip hop came from. That's where a lot of the early music, the African American spirituals, like during that time, stomping and clapping, early gospel. That's just there's nothing more black than that. Our drums were taken away from us when we came to America, and where do we have our voices, our feet, and our hands? So that's was a culminating moment in there. But I mean, but for me, it was the drama. And the other thing with me personally, as the creative person, is that I don't believe in genre. So I believe in mediums, but I don't believe in genre. So I feel like there's so many sounds, and I believe in culture, but I don't believe in genre. You know what I mean? And so there was a culture of that time for black music at that time. I spent maybe a month just listening to everything that came out between 1959 and 1960, just to get a vibe of what music was sounding like to them at the time. So some of that comes through, and definitely the other music that seems more classical, so to speak. Um, I just when I created that music, I wanted it to have this dramatic levity to it, and so that's kind of where that came from, and also to frame it outside of the context of what was happening in the 1960s as well. So um, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say right now.
Well, it's impossible to talk about music that is uniquely American without talking about music from the Black experience.
Of
I could
course.
probably go out on a limb and say any music that we consider to be uniquely American is from the Black experience. Um,
Yeah.
and these are, and so you are integrating a number of musical forms that blossomed despite active attempts to suppress it. And you're
Hmm.
using those forms in a story that is about someone who is being actively suppressed.
Suppressed. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so it marries wonderfully and is so exciting to the
Thanks.
ear. Eki, do you have any advice to the audience on like how to receive this music?
Oh man, I think um, I think just be really present to every moment. So much of the piece is about memory and how um, how trauma you know finds its way into our reality in different ways. And there's so many flashbacks and flash forwards. And for me, it was when I first saw Steve's storyboards, which, by the way, are beautiful. He was almost a comic book artist at one
Yeah.
point, or a graphic novelist. And I was just dazzled by the fluid yet nonlinear storytelling. And yeah, I think just go in without very many preconceptions, or um, don't yeah, just have an open mind as you listen to it. And I think all the music is just absolutely irresistible. And it of course it's also like tied together with an amazing amount of like compositional rigor and intensity, like integrity. Everything is, Steve, you start out with this 4-note motive, that like you put it out there like Beethoven, saying
Yeah.
like, here's the motive,
Yeah.
A flat G, D flat,
Yeah.
and then you just weave it into everything. And so it's like it's so dazzling to watch you bring in popular medium and idioms, and just like craft it all together with all of your classical training. And yeah, just I can't dole out enough kudos. And I think everyone who sees it will know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, with the Decameron Opera Coalition, with Heroes, we're all trying to explore that notion of heroism, heroes who may be non-traditional heroes, may be heroes in the traditional sense, but who have a non-traditional bent to their story, or maybe we're playing with the broader notion of heroism. I think you've thrown it right up the middle with your subject matter, because this is clearly a heroic person, but a very challenging and complicated story. Uh, but beyond the piece itself, hopefully more, and not that the name Steve Wallace is a new one to a lot of people who enjoy music, but I really hope that this means a lot more Steve Wallace operas. What are your musical plans going forward, Steve?
Yeah, I'm writing a lot. I'm singing. I'm actually singing to redo this weekend, in Cavalleria. That kind of came up last minute, but yeah, I'm writing. I have an opera, a one act opera called Undying Love that's going to be set to premiere in Chicago in November, with the organization Hearing in Color. And I'll be conducting that too. So Aki, I might call you for
Ooh,
some.
awesome.
Yeah, I wrote some like 10/8s in there, and I'm like, what? If I knew I was conducting, I wouldn't have gone from 10/8 to 3/8 to 6/8. I'm like, why did
Oh,
I do this?
there's
But
nothing you
but yeah, it fits the drama. That's the purpose of it. I have some other things I'm working on. I'm also with Theater Now, New York City, Writers Lab too, and they're a part of my development of another operatic adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo that I'm working on. It's like a hip hop version, the hip hop opera version, and we'll talk about it later.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so that, and then other things that I just, trying to think of. Oh yeah, I wrote a musical adaptation of Animal Farm that's still in development too. It's as a operetta slash musical theater piece, and yeah.
Well, I don't know where you find the hours, Steve, but I think we'll all be the richer for the fact that you are somehow doing this.
Yeah.
Piece is Unsung Activist about Eldroe Stearns. The company is Opera in the Heights in Houston. If you haven't seen it yet, please do. If you have seen it, I'm sure after this talk you'll want to go back and listen for some of what's been talked about. The composer, librettist, performer, conductor, producer, storyboard artist, you could probably leave a little talent for the rest of us, is Steve Wallace. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt.